The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection, came forward and put this question to Jesus, saying, "Teacher, Moses wrote for us, if someone's brother dies leaving a wife but no child, his brother must take the wife and raise up descendants for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married a woman but died childless. Then the second and the third married her. And likewise all the 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. Now, at the resurrection, whose wife will that woman be? For all 7 had been married to her." Jesus said to them, "The children of this age marry and remarry, but those who are deemed worthy to attain to the coming age and to the resurrection of the dead, neither marry nor are given in marriage. They can no longer die, for they are like angels, and they are the children of God, because they are the ones who will rise. That the dead will rise, even Moses made known in the passage about the bush, when he called out, 'The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.' And he is not God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
It's nice to have a deacon. I can sit there. Seeing familiar faces, I now get a little nervous than this morning. We seldom hear people talk about death. I would often hear a scolding from my friends or my family whenever I would say something about my own demise. I remember my brother Ted made a video presentation for his English class about his life. But in that video, he gave a eulogy for himself, pretending that he already passed away, complete with slides of pictures that catch every moment of his life. My siblings and I were excited to see it until my mother found out, and we were scolded. My brothers and sisters, as we come closer to the end of the church liturgical year, what we commonly hear from our scripture readings are all about the end of times. We hear about heaven and about death. Today, I ended up my life as a member of the laity. I had a death-like experience after this morning's ordination. I was now demoted within the ranks of the clergy. We heard in this Sunday's first reading the story of the 7 brothers who were tortured for their faith. They resisted their torturers' commands because of their hope in a new life with God. A hope that was lived out. As one of the brothers said with a fervent faith, the King of the world will raise us up to live again forever. While the Gospel narrates to us the question raised to Jesus by the Sadducees, the elite member of the Jewish society who does not believe in life after death. But then Jesus gave the Sadducees an answer with truth. He simply stated that marriage is an earthly matter, as heaven doesn't even deal with marriage in the afterlife. Heaven, on the other hand, is all about inclusiveness when it comes to matters of the heart. Love is shared not just with one, but with everyone, with God. I am indeed grateful to the Lord that I became a deacon today, and that I am spared from having to experience marrying 7 wives, let alone one. But who knows what kind of surprise I will have in heaven. But what really is heaven? There was a story about a man who witnessed the basic difference of being in the state of heaven and being in the state of hell. Hell was a big banquet with sumptuous, savory food served in individual bowls. But the guests around the table were miserable and hungry, for they were unable to use the long spoons given them. The spoons weren't flexible enough to bend around to reach their hungry mouths. While heaven had the same scenario. People gathered around delicious food and with long spoons to use for dining. But the guests were happy and enjoyed not only the food but also each other's company, because instead of feeding themselves with a long spoon, they fed the guests who were sitting opposite them. And so they managed to eat perfectly well. We may never know what heaven looks like physically, but as this story represents, we can definitely experience the values of God's kingdom here on earth through our acts of compassion, charity, forgiveness, and most important of all, love in its purest form. Jesus said that we must not think of heaven in terms of our earthly life. Life in heaven is quite different because we will be different. In heaven, our reward is to see God face to face. It is from heaven that we came, and it is to heaven that we are heading home. This is our journey, and we should walk together in this path. We must therefore need to understand how Jesus lived his life, for he is the only way to the Father. Preparation for heaven forms the basis of a great deal of Christian understanding. Christian life is not so much a test as it is a rehearsal. And one way of preparing for something is by doing it. There are so many things that we can learn from one another in matters of faith, of life, of theology and the teachings of the church. But the one very important thing that I hope we can all learn from one another is to live a life of love. Our lives on earth must provide us with a taste of heaven. Jesus is the exemplary model of Christian living. We know that he is not easy to follow, but with God's grace coming from our participation into this sacred meal we call Eucharist, there is nothing to worry. God is ever faithful, and he will strengthen us, as St. Paul reminded us from our second reading. For the sacred body and blood we receive at this altar is our food and strength for the journey. It is through the power of this great mystery of our deep hope and faith that gives us the fortitude to continue our journey. as we gather around the Eucharist each Sunday, let us always be reminded that we are all called to live our lives every moment and in every place that we find ourselves in preparation for heaven, a life eternal with God. And the good thing about this is that it is really not hard to do. The time is now, and the place is here, because we can begin with a simple smile, a warm embrace, a shared laughs or some tears, a sincere whisper of "I'm sorry," or the reconciling words, "I forgive," and life-giving words of "I love you." All these speak volume of life in heaven, life permeated by love. As I begin a new chapter of my ministry here at St. John the Baptist as an ordained minister, my hope is that we will continue to live a life of love, a life that prepared us for God. For this is what nurtured my vocation throughout all these years. It was your support, it was your friendship, your prayers that brought me to where I stand now. As transitional deacon, allow me to walk with you, to serve you as we together journey towards our true home. Let me begin to say, thank you. Thank you for giving me an example to live in love. And so, my brothers and sisters, renewed by the Word and by this Eucharist, like the 7 brothers or the widow in the Gospel, all of us are given the sure promise of hope of a life in perfect peace and perfect endless fulfillment with God in heaven, which is our true home. May the Lord direct your hearts to the love of God and to the endurance of Christ.